be cocaine in the upholstery. That's the story you were setting up for this guy, yeah?
Hey guys, Kiwi here, warning of spoilers for Breaking Bad, El Camino, and Better Call Saul to Season 6, Episode 8. In this video, I'll be breaking down how exactly Jimmy and Kim tragically ruined Howard's legacy. Like the video if you end up enjoying it, subscribe to the channel, and follow me on Twitter for more Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad updates. That being said, let's jump into the breakdown. So Jimmy and Kim's plans to destroy Howard for the Sandpiper money all started in the Season 5 finale. Kim explained how she wanted to use the Sandpiper money, set up a pro bono law practice to help people that truly needed it.
I'd hire Bruce from HHM. I'd get Viola. I'd rent the smallest, shittiest office I could find near the courthouse and open a pro bono practice. Give regular people the kind of representation usually only millionaires get.
Giving a Robin Hood vibe to it all. We knew that during the prolonged Season 5 and Season 6 break that things were going to get bad, but we couldn't have ever imagined things getting as bad as they truly did. During the Season 5 finale, Jimmy even tried warning Kim that things they'd have to do to Howard would be irreversible, something unforgivable if you would.
We're not talking about a bar trick here. We're talking about scorched earth.
Jimmy told Kim it'd have to be scorched earth, and that Howard may never be able to practice law again. This turned out to be true, but also in a much worse way than they could have ever predicted.
To get a bunch of lawyers to run for the exits, Howard would have to have done something unforgivable. At the end of it, he might never be able to practice law again. He doesn't deserve that.
Jimmy told Kim that she wouldn't be able to live with herself after doing it, and that she's too good of a person for it. Kim implied to Jimmy that she would be completely fine living with it.
Yeah, I know you could help a lot of people. I get it, but Kim doing this, it's not you. You would not be okay with it.
Wouldn't I?
And downplays it as one minor career setback for a single lawyer.
We're talking about a career setback. A career setback. A career setback. A career setback.
So throughout the first half of Season 6, Jimmy and Kim kept setting up Howard to look like a secret drug addict along with an adulterer. Most of their schemes just involved making Howard look bad in front of Cliff in order to turn him against Howard. The real nail in the coffin didn't happen until episode 607 in regards to the mediation con. I already have a full video breaking down the mediation meeting if you want to check that out, but my point here is that it caused Howard to make a fool of himself in front of multiple firms including HHM, Davis and Maine, Schweikart and Coakley, and all their associates and elder clients. Now, did turning Cliff against Howard really work? Regardless of Cliff's personal opinion, Howard unintentionally tanked the case, forcing them to settle as there's no way they would have been able to prove to the board that Jimmy set Howard up.
I know what it sounds like, but you have to believe me.
It doesn't matter. You think you're going to be able to convince them it was all Jimmy McGill?
Knowing this, that night Howard personally met Jimmy and Kim to ask them why they burned him to the ground. Jimmy argued that Howard would be fine, and Howard reluctantly agreed that with time he'd eventually land on his feet. Howard admits that he'll be able to persevere through it as he's gone through worse. This is a low point in Howard's career, but in time he would have been able to rebuild and slowly fix his reputation and career. Lalo shows up and kills Howard, obviously blocking his ability to ever work through anything. So initially it was true that Kim would have been able to live with herself for mildly destroying Howard's career, but indirectly getting Howard killed because of it is something that she could have never seen coming. Them getting Howard killed was supposed to be a huge wake-up call for Kim, showing her how bad the unintended consequences of her actions could be. Kim put blinders on throughout all of Season 6 in regards to the consequences to her actions. This was finally something she couldn't turn a blind eye to, especially with it happening right in front of her. Howard's final moments of his career turned out to be a huge public embarrassment similar to Chuck. Also similar to Chuck, since Howard ends up dying, he'll never be able to redeem himself. So at the end of 607, we already figured that Howard's legacy would be tainted, although it was still technically up in the air. But by the end of 608, it's confirmed that Howard's legacy is ruined. In order to cover up Howard's death, Mike sets up Howard's death as a drug-induced unaliving. Mike tells them that he'll plant Howard's car a few states away at a beach, along with planting drugs in his car, this time real drugs. Mike tells Jimmy and Kim how that's what you were setting this guy up for anyways, right? Although this is true, with Mike using their schemes to his advantage to cover up Howard's death, Mike may be pouring salt in the wound a bit more than he realizes. Jimmy and Kim never wanted to permanently destroy Howard's good name and legacy. That's exactly what this cover-up story will do. To be fair, remember that Jimmy warned Kim about something like this happening in the Season 5 finale, but she didn't believe him. Granted, they didn't think that Howard would end up getting somehow killed, but Jimmy still warned Kim that they'd have to burn him so bad that it'd completely ruin his reputation and legacy, to the point that he'd never be able to practice law again. again. Not only has that come true, but adding icing to the cake, they indirectly got Howard killed, so now he can never try to redeem himself even if he wanted to. Plus, after episode 607 was still in the air in regards to rumors about Howard being a druggie, but now the cover-up story will prove without a doubt that it's true, even though it never was. Also, to add a cherry on top to the icing on the cake, not only will Howard's car be found with drugs inside of it, Jimmy and Kim are forced to back up that cover story.
You tell the cops you saw him. He came here. Seemed like maybe he was chemically altered. Didn't make a lick of sense. Then he left, that's all you know.
Mike tells Jimmy and Kim that since Howard's car was at their apartment for many hours that night, that when Howard's death is eventually mentioned to them by anyone, they'll have to call the police saying how they were the last ones to ever see him alive. They have to tell the cops that Howard showed up to their place clearly intoxicated and on drugs, made no sense, and then left. So it's not just the drugs planted in Howard's car as the nail in the coffin, but also their own testimony for being the last ones to see Howard. It'll further hammer down the idea home that Howard was on drugs and had a serious problem with it. Just the fact that not only is Mike using their schemes to his advantage, but that he's forcing them to be involved with the cover-up and double down on the idea of Howard being a druggie as well.
His car was here for hours last night. Good chance somebody noticed it. That means you are the last people to see him alive.
This definitely just multiplies the guilt that Jimmy and Kim will have to go through in regards to getting Howard killed, along with further ruining his reputation and legacy in order to aid in the cover-up story for his death. By the end of episode 607, they were already traumatized by Howard's death due to what they did to him, but there was a small inkling that they would have been able to eventually move on and try to forget about it. But now with having to back up the cover story for Howard's death, they'll forever be taking this with them for the rest of their lives, even more so than before. They're trapped doing something that'll make them feel even worse for what they did to Howard all season long, which is just horribly tragic. It is so tragic that Howard will be misremembered as a secret drug addict who took his own life instead of the great man he was. Howard was no saint. He could be a bit of a cliche corporate prick, but he always meant well. Howard always tried doing his best to help the people around him, even when he was forced into situations he didn't agree with. Howard went through so much horrible crap due to Jimmy, but he still came out of it on the other side trying to fix himself and become a better man. There was a huge amount of debt due to having to pay Chuck out of HHM personally out of pocket, which only happened because Jimmy messed with their insurance. There was dealing with the grief from Chuck's death, again due to Jimmy completely pushing the guilt onto Howard when really Chuck's death was ultimately Jimmy's fault, along with Howard's struggling marriage, which was the result of both of the two previous things I just said combined. Huge debt due to paying out Chuck, grief from Chuck's death, along with Howard making up his namaste lifestyle persona in order to deal with it. Cheryl became jaded to Howard due to all of this, and all of this was in one way or another caused by Jimmy, even if indirectly and unintentionally. But as I've said, Howard worked his way through all those things and came out the other side wanting to be a better man. He rebuilt his fortune, he properly processed and grieved Chuck's death in order to get over it, and he really wanted to fix his marriage. Howard would have also worked his way through the mediation debacle as well, but he got that opportunity robbed from him when Lalo shot a bullet into his head. And yes, although Jimmy was at fault for that too, I will admit that Kim holds even more the guilt due to being the one that pushed the schemes and practically forced Jimmy to go along with it even though he never really wanted to. However, Howard did die thinking that Jimmy was the true mastermind behind it all, when really it was Kim. And then although no one will ever know this, having Howard buried next to his killer, Lalo, is just insult to injury. Like, that is just so horrible. I felt the need to discuss this in its own video to emphasize the fact that after all was said and done, after everything that happened throughout episodes 607 and 608, the story did properly give Howard's character a definite bookend, and in an incredibly sad and tragic way at that. Kim was in way over her head for the past season and a half, from standing up to Lalo in season 5, along with everything in regards to screwing over Howard in season 6, and now it's finally catching up with her. I think it's fair to say that Kim will now have PTSD and trauma from the whole season 6 situation in the same ways that Jimmy did from season 5, and I'm really interested to see how they handle that throughout the rest of the show. Let me know what you think about Howard's tragic end in the comments below, along with the fact that Jimmy and Kim have completely ruined his reputation and legacy, not only due to everything they did with Howard before he died in season 6, but along with everything they have to do after Howard died as part of their cover-up story for his death. I'd appreciate a like on the video if you've enjoyed anything I've said today, and if you're new to the channel and just haven't yet already, subscribe and hit that bell notification to stay updated on when I post new content on Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad. I'm real close to 30k subscribers, so thank you all so much for all of the constant support. Speaking of which, if you want to give a little extra support, check out my Patreon or give a super thanks to help support the channel financially. But most importantly, I thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.
At the end of it, he might never be able to practice law again. He doesn't deserve that.
A career setback. A career setback. A career setback.